If you are thinking about relocating to Canada, the obvious cities probably come to mind first: Toronto, Vancouver, maybe Montreal. These are the names that dominate the conversation, and they are the places most people default to when they picture life in Canada. But after going through the latest quality of life data for Canadian cities in 2026, I can tell you that the conventional wisdom about where to move in Canada is missing some genuinely compelling answers. Some of the cities that ranked at the very top of this list are not the ones most people are considering, and some of the most talked about destinations have real weaknesses in the data that are worth understanding before you make a decision. This is my breakdown of the 10 best Canadian cities for quality of life in 2026, and a few of these results genuinely surprised me. If you are researching a move to Canada and want this kind of breakdown regularly, hit like and subscribe. This is exactly the kind of research I do, so you have something concrete to work with. Before getting into the list, it helps to understand what quality of life actually means in this context. The rankings come from Numbeo's 2026 Quality of Life Index, which measures the factors that directly affect day-to-day living: safety, healthcare access, cost of living, housing affordability, commute times, pollution levels, and climate all feed into the overall score. This is not a list of the most famous cities or the most talked about real estate markets. It is a data-driven picture of where life is actually good on the ground, and that distinction matters a lot when you are making a real decision about where to put down roots. Ottawa sitting at the top of this list with a quality of life index score of 198.1 genuinely caught my attention. Not because it is a bad city, but because it almost never leads this kind of conversation. The data makes a compelling case. Ottawa scores consistently well across almost every single indicator: strong purchasing power, high safety scores, housing that is meaningfully more affordable than Toronto or Vancouver, shorter commute times, lower pollution, good healthcare access, and as Canada's capital, it has a stable public sector employment base that supports income security in a way most cities cannot match. Add in extensive green spaces, bike paths, and easy access to nature, and Ottawa is offering something that is very hard to find in a city of its size anywhere in the country. If you are relocating to Canada and you have not seriously looked at Ottawa, the data says you should. Nanaimo, coming in second, is the result that will surprise most people the most, and I think that surprise is exactly the point. Located on Vancouver Island, Nanaimo delivers a coastal lifestyle with short commute times, low pollution, and a mild climate that is genuinely rare by Canadian standards. It is a slower pace of life than a major metropolitan center, but for families, retirees, and remote workers, that trade-off is increasingly attractive. Housing affordability is still a challenge in Nanaimo, but it is significantly more accessible than nearby Vancouver or Victoria. For anyone who has looked at Vancouver Island and assumed Victoria was the only viable option, Nanaimo is worth a much closer look. Victoria has long had a reputation for quality of life, and the data backs that up with a score of 182.1. Mild winters, walkable neighborhoods, low pollution, strong safety scores, and good healthcare access all contribute to a picture of a city that genuinely delivers on its reputation. The main weakness in Victoria's numbers is housing affordability. The property price to income ratio is high, and that is a real consideration for anyone relocating on a budget. But for people where lifestyle is the primary filter, Victoria keeps ranking near the top for good reason. Quebec City, at number 4, stands out for a specific reason that the data makes very clear. It has one of the highest safety scores of any city in the entire country. Combined with relatively low living costs and stable housing prices, it presents one of the best affordability to quality ratios in Canada. Strong public services, a vibrant cultural identity, and reliable healthcare access round out the picture. The winters are long and cold, and that is not a small thing. But shorter commutes and lower congestion improve everyday living in a way that partially offsets the climate challenge. For families and newcomers prioritizing safety and affordability together, Quebec City is a genuinely compelling answer. Vancouver is the city on this list that most people will already have in their minds, and with a score of 180.7, it absolutely earns its place. Mild winters, outstanding access to nature, strong health care, low pollution, and global connectivity make it one of Canada's most desirable cities for good reason. But the data is also honest about Vancouver's biggest problem: housing affordability. The property price to income ratio in Vancouver is among the highest in the entire country, and that single factor weighs heavily on the overall score. If you can absorb the housing costs, Vancouver delivers. If affordability is a real constraint, the data suggests several cities above it on this list offer a better overall picture. Calgary at number 6 is one of the most economically balanced cities on this list, and that is what makes it interesting for people relocating from other countries. Strong purchasing power, relatively affordable housing, lower taxes, and competitive wages all support higher disposable incomes than you will find in most major Canadian cities. Safety scores are strong, healthcare access is good, commute times are reasonable, and access to the Rocky Mountains gives Calgary a lifestyle dimension that is genuinely hard to put a price on. The climate is colder than the British Columbia cities, but for people prioritizing economic opportunity without the housing pressures of Vancouver or Toronto, Calgary makes a very strong case. Halifax, coming in at number 7, is another result that deserves more attention than it typically gets. A growing job market, moderate living costs, a strong sense of community, and a coastal location that keeps pollution low all contribute to a score of 176.8. Housing in Halifax is meaningfully more accessible than in Vancouver or Toronto. The technology, education, and healthcare sectors are expanding, and the pace of life is genuinely different from a major urban center in a way that a lot of people find appealing once they experience it. Halifax is a city that keeps quietly improving, and the data reflects that. Edmonton, at number 8, ranks particularly well for two things: healthcare access and housing affordability. It has one of the strongest healthcare index scores among all Canadian cities, and housing costs are lower than most cities of comparable size in the country. Colder winters are the main trade-off, and that is a genuine consideration, but strong wages, good public services, and a stable cost of living make Edmonton a solid choice for families and newcomers who are putting affordability and access to essential services at the top of their list. Kelowna rounds out the British Columbia cities on this list with a score of 172.9, and it earns its place through a combination of short commute times, low pollution, outdoor recreation access in the Okanagan Valley, and a climate that is milder than most of Canada. Housing costs have risen in recent years, and that is putting pressure on affordability, which is worth factoring in. But a growing service economy, strong tourism, and increasing remote work opportunities are supporting long-term livability in a way that makes Kelowna increasingly attractive for people who want lifestyle above all else. Montreal, closing out the list at number 10, is the city that will feel most surprising to people who assumed it would rank higher. With a score of 172.0, it is still a strong performer, but it lands 10th rather than 1st for specific reasons. What Montreal does exceptionally well is affordability at scale. For a major city, its housing costs are far below Toronto and Vancouver, and its cultural life, public transport, bilingual environment, and university presence make it one of the most vibrant cities in the country. Longer commute times and moderate pollution levels are the factors that hold its score back relative to the cities above it. For immigrants, students, and professionals, Montreal remains one of the most compelling entry points into Canadian life. The affordability advantage is real and significant. What this data makes clear is that the best places to live in Canada in 2026 are not always the places that dominate the conversation. Ottawa leading the entire country by a clear margin. Nanaimo outranking Vancouver. Quebec City offering one of the best safety to affordability combinations in the country. These are the findings that shift how you should be thinking about a Canadian relocation. The cities most people default to when they picture life in Canada are still worth considering, but the data says there are places delivering a better overall quality of life right now, and knowing where those places are before you make a decision is exactly the kind of edge that matters. If you are researching a move to Canada and want to keep building on this, subscribe to the channel. I will keep doing this research so you have something concrete to work from.